right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Seed Lab podcast. And I am your co host, Chef Andre Sawyers. And today we have an interesting guest with us today. Today we have Dr. Larissa Assam. And before we get started and we jump into some questions, I want you, Dr. Larissa, to give us a little bit of background on who Dr. Larissa is.
Thank you for having me, Chef Dre. God bless you.
Mhm.
Hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Larissa Assam. I am a child of God. I am a doctor, an author, an entrepreneur. I've been in business in some way, shape, or form since I was probably about 8 years old, actually. Um, and I like to laugh in a nutshell. There's much more I can say, but at a high level, that's who I am.
Since you like to laugh, tell us a joke right now.
Wait, here's the thing. I like to laugh, but I don't necessarily make the jokes.
Okay.
But if
So,
someone makes a joke, then I'll laugh.
okay.
If it's
Okay.
funny.
Okay. Okay. So I'll keep that in mind as we have this conversation today. I just wanted to see if maybe sometimes people like to laugh. They love to tell jokes too. So I figured maybe you might have something in your bag, just in case.
That's fair.
Um, all right. Well, thank you for giving us an overview on who you are. You mentioned that you've essentially, you've been an entrepreneur since you were a young girl. Is that more or less correct?
Hmm.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about entrepreneurship. Since you mentioned that you were an entrepreneur from a very young girl, what's a lesson that you've learned since you've been entrepreneuring for a while? What's a lesson?
Wow, that's a good question. There are many lessons. I think the biggest one is, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur as a Christian or as a follower of Jesus Christ, I think they're different. You have to surrender to God every single day. Every single day. I think that is the biggest lesson. And personally, my journey has changed because I wasn't serious about my walk with God, which is a whole story in itself. But now that looks like every day I ask him, like, what are my marching orders? And I really see entrepreneurship as walking out the marching orders that he gives to me every single day. It could be one thing, could be three things, typically about three things per day is what I'm told. And it now just comes down to execution. So then when you think about it, entrepreneurship to me is really about obedience to Christ.
Mm,
That's what I would say.
that's good. All right. So you mentioned something that I think is very, very important as an entrepreneur, execution.
Hmm.
Um, have you come across a time where, maybe execution wasn't maybe a strong suit? Have you always been able to execute? What has been the thing that has allowed you to really execute at a high level?
Um, I think for me, to answer the question, I have had times when I've struggled with execution. I haven't been consistent because that's part of it. Sometimes you can start something, but then you're not consistent with it and you're distracted or you're afraid. And I remember this has happened to me multiple times, but one time when this happened, someone had said something to me, and essentially, I didn't realize how much the comment had affected me, if that makes sense. And so, because that had happened and I didn't catch it and notice it, then for about 4 to 5 months, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So essentially, I was being disobedient in executing on whatever it was that God had told me to do in that season, business wise, because I was so afraid of what someone had said to me. So it's happened to me multiple times. It's happened for multiple reasons as well. So that was one example because of what someone had said. But it's also happened because I was afraid. At some point, I remember There was another time when I just wasn't clear. I think when you don't have clarity, it's hard to be consistent and it's hard to move. But entrepreneurship, it's a balance because you're never going to have 100% clarity. And I think that's applicable to all areas of life. Sometimes we're waiting for perfection. And I used to be, quote unquote, like a perfectionist, wanting everything to be nice, dot the I's and cross the T's. But then I quickly learned that when I had when I literally was forced into full-time entrepreneurship, that's when the lesson clicked for me. I have no choice but to do this and to do this now. And I'm just going to have to learn along the way, basically.
You mentioned force. What forced you?
Um, so basically, I had completed my residency and I thought, oh, private practice, I'll work for like 2 to 3 years, save up a lot of money, and then I'll start private practice. I always knew that I wanted to do it, but I had no plans of doing it anytime soon. And then I very quickly noticed that I had multiple job offers, but they were all taking a while to get started. And
Mm.
I was graduating residency. I live in a high cost of living area and I did not have you don't make much first of all as a resident. So I didn't have like, a chunk of change saved up. And I think my grandmother had told me something when I was younger. I grew up in a business household, I could say. And my grandmother had said something to me. She used to say different things. I didn't know that she was planting seeds at the time, but one of the things she had told me a long time ago, and maybe that's why I always have had some type of business, is you should never rely on one source of income. So even though I was in residency, I had already published books, I already had things in the works. And although I knew that, or I wanted to start my business like 2 to 3 years after residency, I still had already written the business plan like 6 months prior. So when I quickly noticed that jobs were not starting on time, even though the offers were coming, and I had rent to pay, I had bills to pay, I very quickly realized, like, okay, what do I need to do? I went into prayer, and that's basically what the Lord said. You need to start your business and you need to start it right now. And it's
Wow.
so much since I started it, not knowing. I was thinking of my bills, if I'm being honest. I wasn't thinking of the impact that God was trying to create through my business. But now I understand why there was such an urgency and why even the delays with the jobs, quote unquote, they were actually helpful. Because if I was working 80 hours a week, 40 hours a week, like I had been previously, there was no way I would be able to do the kind of business that Rofi is.
Yeah, that's good. So you mentioned something, right? You mentioned you started to speak a little bit about your journey. So just in terms of your journey, what inspired you to pursue your field of expertise, and how did your journey lead to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm a doctor by God's grace, board certified in family medicine, but I do a lot of integrative medicine work or functional medicine. So I grew up in Cameroon. I was born and raised, love it. It's called Africa in miniature, by the way, for those who have never been. And so I grew up exposed to a lot, we did Cameroon history, African history, world history. So I really had a very big like worldview, so to speak. And then I grew up in a medically inclined household, I would say. My dad's a doctor, my mom is a pharmacist. And so growing up for me looked like people would come to the house in the evenings or on the weekends because they wanted to consult my dad. He had a clinic, but he actually worked across three hospitals and had a clinic as well. And then when I went to boarding school, my mom started a pharmacy. And then they both basically were running their own businesses in the healthcare world.
Wow.
And so that was what growing up was like for me. My dad is a radiologist by specialty, and that's with that being a specialty field, you could charge a lot of money for ultrasounds, x-rays, MRIs, etc. But he had a conviction that God had called him to take care of the less privileged, like the underserved. And so in my humble opinion, I think he charged a fraction of the cost of what he was supposed to. And he would very often see people for free. People would not be able to afford to pay. Some people just didn't have it, but they would not be able to afford it. And so sometimes payment would look like they would cook food and bring it. And so as a child on our receiving end, we always had tons of food. People were just bringing something every single day, every single time. Or sometimes it was just out of appreciation because they had helped him or taken care of a family member. So I grew up in that. And then when I was 8, my dad was in a really, really bad car accident. He was driving, and there was a lot of turmoil going on in my family at the time, my extended family. And so that day when he was driving late at night after work, basically his car tumbled into a valley. And so um, people gathered, people were around gathered. And I don't know how, truly by God's grace, they were some way, somehow were able to get him out of the car, took him to the hospital. They were able to find his phone, and the number they could find was his youngest brother's number. So they called him. Long story short, he had injuries to his skull, to his neck, and to his spinal cord. And I always say that because those are 3 points that can kill you on the spot. And so when he went to the hospital, they called my mom eventually. The next morning, um, we were living an hour away. So my dad would work 5 days in the bigger city, which is equivalent to like New York City. And we were living in the suburbs. So let's say maybe like Poughkeepsie or something like that, like away from it. So he would come home on the weekends and then work because he was, working so much during the week. And long story short, when my mom got the call, she went immediately that night, woke up the next morning. My mom wasn't there. And I was like, oh, that's not like her to not tell me at least where she's going. And so he had had the accident. The doctors pretty much told my mom verbatim that if she did not get him out of Cameroon, he was going to die. Cameroon
Wow.
just didn't have the infrastructure at the time to take care of the healthcare. They didn't have the healthcare infrastructure to take care of that degree of severity, the criticality of his injuries. So when I woke up, I was getting ready for school, helping get my siblings ready for school. I'm the oldest. People kept coming to the house, and usually our house, it was like a revolving door. Usually there are always a lot of people coming, but not that early in the morning. And I was paying attention to what they were. We had our babysitter who was with us, so they were speaking to her and asking her, so, in like broken English, like, so what happened to him? Is it his skull? I'm like, oh, something has happened. So I got my siblings ready, and I started to put two and two together, and I was like, okay, yeah, daddy has had an accident. I didn't tell my siblings, but then we went to school. By the time I came home, my grandmother was at home, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, something has definitely
Right.
something has definitely just happened. My grandmother used to live an hour away. She used to live by the beach, I would say, and it was also an hour away. So when she came randomly on a weekday, that wasn't like her. And she came and she basically stayed with us all of that week. I didn't say anything to her, but I just was within myself just putting things together. And I was about 8 at the time. So, long story short, my mom comes back a week later and tells us, daddy has had an accident, and we basically have to leave Cameroon right now. So he was medically evacuated to the UK for 4 months. So I didn't see my parents for 4 months. And during that time, by God's grace, my grandmother stayed with us, and she literally put us on a prayer schedule. So we knew the schedule like Monday, Tuesday, there were people coming to the house to pray. It was like a rotating thing for 4 months. But that incident opened my eyes at a very young age, I think, to realize, oh, okay, I knew I wanted to help people when I grew up,
Oh,
but
okay.
this is the way I want to do it, because
Yeah.
I had seen him work across all of these different hospitals doing so much. But then I felt like at his time of need, the country's healthcare system was not able to support and provide the needs that he had health wise. So I decided early on that medicine was what I wanted to do. I didn't know at the time that that was actually my calling. Like, I was literally being called into it, and that was the avenue being used. So all of it was just seeds being planted over time, all of it, getting to see the life in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, all of it. And even my dad, he had told me, don't do medicine. He was like, this is too much work. He was like, do business, do finance, something like that, because you're going to make more money. Because he knew the life he was living. And I was like,
Wow.
how are you in this? And then you're telling me not to do it. But that was good because when I made my choice, I wasn't being forced, which is the case for a lot of people who actually end up going into medicine. And I think this is a calling. You should not do this if you're not called into it. It's
Mm,
of work. It's a lot. It's a lot that no, not there's no amount of money that can ever, to me, suffice for what I've had to learn and go through just to do this work. None.
wow.
But yeah.
All right. I mean, so thank you for sharing your journey. I mean, that's quite a journey. And I think it's so interesting, to hear how the Lord has his way of kind of planting a seed, right? And that becomes the thing that over time, without you even knowing, you're watering it, it's growing, the desire's growing, and before you know it, here you are, right? So here you are now today. You're running your own private practice by the grace of God, and you have obviously helped so many people, probably across the world at this point. When it comes to your area, and so obviously you're specialized in family medicine. What are some common misconceptions that people have around that area? And what do you wish more people understood?
I think people think that family medicine is just about primary care, and it's not. It's You're responsible for knowing literally every single thing there is to know within the medical field. And so you're the first point of contact. 90%, about 90%, I should say, of medical needs can be addressed by a primary care doctor, a family medicine doctor. And in today's virtual world, about 90% of what family medicine doctors do can actually be done virtually. So there's quite a lot that we are able to do. We do procedures, we do injections, we do so much. In fact, I didn't want to do family medicine because I thought it was going to be very boring. And in med school, my when I did my rotation, even though it didn't fully convince me at the time, my attending told me, who was supervising me, he told me when I was on my family medicine rotation to pay particular attention to it because of how he had observed me working at his clinic. At the time, I had my eyes set on surgery, but
Mm,
um, on plastic surgery in particular, actually. And so family medicine is very broad. You can do literally anything. You can reinvent yourself as well in within family med, and I love that. Some people would choose to focus on obesity, on menopause. Some people will do women's health. Some family medicine doctors deliver babies. Some do c-sections even. There are some who go into the military. There's so many things that you can do with family med. So I love how versatile it is, but I realize most people don't know that, both doctors and patients.
okay, that's good. So if you could do it all over again, would you do family med again?
1000%. I would. Hmm.
So that means this is like your thing. This is your calling. No, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I would.
Could you share a pivotal moment in your career that changed your perspective or like approach when it comes to family medicine?
Okay, yes. When I was in residence, it kind of started in medical school. Hmm.
Mhm.
Let me talk about residency, but I'll relate it to medical school. So in residency, some way somehow, I had patients who did not like taking medication. And we had the kind of relationship where they would just tell me very honestly, like, Dr. Assam, I love you, but to be very honest, it's not you. I just really don't like medicine and I'm not going to take it.
Mm,
And that degree, I appreciated the honesty, but then it left me feeling like, okay, I keep getting people who don't like taking medicine, and I'm appreciative of the fact that they're honest enough to even tell me that they're not going to take the medication that I'm about to prescribe to them. What then do I do? And that changed the way I practice because it made me go and start to do research and to learn, okay, if I'm saying to someone that you have a metabolic condition like high blood pressure, and I'm saying to you, with your lifestyle, we can help reverse it, what does that really mean? What does it really mean to eat clean, to eat healthy, to exercise? What are the numbers? Because I like structure, I like specifics, and I thrive when I have that. So I then, again, not knowing that that was even a seed leading to what I'm doing now, but I then started to do research and find out that there are actually some things which have been studied for time. For example, moringa, which I talk about a lot at my practice, has been very well researched, and it's been published in multiple studies how helpful it is in different things: cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, etc., pregnancy.
mm, mm.
And so that was pivotal for me because it changed how I practiced, and the outcomes changed as well.
Wow.
I then went from simply having patients who were managed in terms of diabetes and high blood pressure because they were on medication. But then I started to de escalate people off of medication. So, what I'm doing now, it didn't start now, it started way back when, throughout my training years, because I remember one woman in particular. I believe God just highlighted her to me, but she was elderly. She looked good. She was in her early 60s, I believe, and she was on insulin for diabetes. And it just bothered me that she had to keep checking her blood glucose levels every day and had to inject herself to get the insulin. That's standard of care for diabetes for someone who's diabetic on insulin. But I just remember that it bothered me that that would have to be her life in her later years. And so I told her, I was like, let's just see what happens if I put you on salads for a month. Can you do that? Can you stick with it? No dairy, just salads, for example, for a month. And she was like, I've never done that before, but let's see. And so she did it. This woman's A1C went from when I started taking care of her at that time, it was 9. So ideally, your A1C should be less than 6.4. At the time, it was if you're diabetic, and hers was 9. Usually we check it every 3 months, but she was so excited that she went to get hers drawn like a month early. So after 2 months, her A1C had dropped from 9 to 7 with no medications, basically within 2 months. And that was an early check. Needless to say, by the third month, it was normal. And I think once I saw the evidence of the lifestyle changes, I was like, okay, some people
Mm.
it's salad, some people it's other things. It just depends. And that's why I love the idea of personalized medicine. Some people are from African countries. If I tell someone from Swaziland to eat broccoli every day, they may look at me and tell me very honestly, I don't think I'm going to do that because they've never eaten broccoli in their life and they may not like it. But maybe there's something that they're familiar with that they can eat and it will help them. And it can work because they can be consistent with it because they actually like it. So it depends on the person, it depends on the patient, it depends on their background, their preferences. But I truly believe that we rush too much to give people medication. I think there's a lot that needs to be explored lifestyle wise and optimized lifestyle wise. And I have no problems with medications, but sometimes we just need to help people relearn how to eat and how to live. And that's why I always tell my patients that the Latin meaning of the word doctor, it's actually teacher. Your doctor is supposed to
Oh,
teach you.
wow.
Your doctor is supposed to teach you how to live healthy. It's okay if you feel like I don't know what ingredients to use or what my blood pressure should be. You're not supposed to know, but it's your
How would
doctor's
you
job
know?
to be able to
Yeah,
teach you.
yeah. Wow, that's good. That's good. I mean, so that's amazing. I did not know that. And you know, I've been in the field for a while, and I did not know that's what that meant. You learn something new every day. Um, okay, well, speaking of which, you know, what do you, at least from what you've been seeing, right? There's so much happening now. I even think the landscape of health and wellness has certainly changed quite a bit. You know, you know, you mentioned also doing research, right? So from what you're seeing right now, you know, what are you most excited about in this space?
I'm very excited about regenerative medicine.
Mm,
I'm
okay.
excited because people are not interested. Some people will call it aesthetic medicine, but I really do believe there's a difference. People want to live, we have a generation that is living longer. Not only do they want to live longer, they want to look good and feel good. They want to have a good quality of life as they live longer. And so they
Hmm.
want to be taught and prepared for that. And I believe that the field of regenerative medicine is exactly for that reason. And so, with the rise of med spas, with the rise of wellness hospitality, I believe that that is the direction we're going. There's a lot of medical tourism. People are traveling to different parts of the world because they're curious. They want to know what potential biomarkers can help them know what they could be at risk of now and in the future so that they can do something about it. And I think as healthcare providers, it's imperative that we stay with the times, that we're up to date on the research, and we also have a plan in place for those who are interested in longevity and anti aging. I think that is definitely the direction we're going in. It's not about Botox, it's not about fillers, it's not about that, but it's saying, this is the skin I find myself in. How can I keep it looking great for as long as possible? And I think this applies to both men and to women. One of the things I love about being a family medicine doctor is you get to take care of people of all ages, all genders, literally everyone. And so I always get excited when I find men who are also very invested in their health. I think once, in some way, somehow, when they find what works for them, they tend to stick to it more than even my female patients, in my humble opinion. But yeah, I think there's a lot in the regenerative space that's coming, a lot that still needs to be studied, but that's what I foresee.
Yeah. That's also really insightful because, you know, I think at the rate that we're going, I almost feel like like technology can't even keep up, right? So
Hmm.
I think it's all interesting to see how all of this will unfold, and even like how you integrate yourself into this regenerative space, right? Do you think that there's a world in which, or do you see more people aligning more to this than like, I guess what we know to be traditional med?
I think so. They're interested in prevention. They are interested in, I was talking to someone and that stood out to me. Actually, I've had two conversations like this with women who've had multiple children, and they are saying, okay, I'm done having my children, at least for now, but my stomach doesn't look the way it used to before.
Right.
I don't want to get plastic surgery, and what can I do? So they're invested. They understand the fact that, and they look great. They understand the fact that, yes, their bodies will naturally change after having children, but how can I optimize what I have, literally? And so I think there's curiosity. I think it's going to continue to grow. Also, people are doing their own research. We are living in the age of AI, artificial intelligence. And I think, some people have an issue with it in the healthcare field, but I think it's good. My patients, most of the time, they've looked things on Chat GPT, looked them up already before they come to me. And so oftentimes it's course correcting. Either what you saw is actually accurate or let's adjust. Sometimes it can kind of inflate things a bit. But I think
Yeah.
to your point, technology is even trying to keep up with the generation that we have today. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned something that's really interesting, right? You mentioned AI. Um, in a world where everyone is essentially going to AI more than they go to God at this point, right?
Mercy.
Um, how do you how do you how do you deal with that, right? Because as you could imagine, people are like you said, people will literally go on Chat and all these other different AI platforms, and they'll it's like the new WebMD on crack, right?
Yeah.
Right. How do you manage that, right? That's probably quite difficult when someone's like, oh well, I went on Chat and I did da, and then they come to you and they almost are using Chat to compare to you and what you know, right? Having gone through the work, having done tons years, right, of schooling and hands-on experience, and now they're using the AI doctor and trying to basically compare the two and have y'all fight against each other. How do you deal with that?
I think one word I would say is reassurance. I
Mm,
find myself reassuring patients a lot because the way algorithms are set, because they need to safeguard themselves, is oftentimes they will go for the worst case scenario and kind of they would rather do that and then work backwards. But the test of every good doctor, in my eyes, is how calm you can remain under pressure.
mm,
That's the true test. So even if they're coming to me and AI has just said, we think this is cancer, how my demeanor is going to affect them, the atmosphere I create is going to affect them, even if I also have a suspicion that it is cancer. And that's the human factor that you just can't take away. So I
mm,
believe AI is going to expose the fact that we've always known that bedside manner is the most important thing for a good doctor. And it's the fusion of no being confident in your knowledge and grounded in that, and also being able to be the calming factor or the calming force, so to speak, when people are otherwise very concerned. And I understand the reason why they're going to AI in the first place is because they're worried. They're worried. And so it's not even to say, don't do that. When we've sorted it out, then I make a joke about it and I say, okay, let's stay off these platforms because, now everybody can laugh about it. But, of course, you do your due diligence, you order labs if need be, you order imaging if need be. And sometimes it's actually not necessary. And even if that's the case, I'll explain this is going to expose you to radiation. If you're okay with that, sure, let's do it. If not, then I think it's best that we just monitor and see. One of the things I learned when I was training, I trained at Georgetown, and it's known for it's a great hospital, but it's known for cancer and it's known for transplants. Those are
mm,
two patient populations that are very, very sick. I remember there was a doctor who I was working with so we call our supervising doctors attendings. And it was my patient on our team, I should say. But she was we were worried that she was dying right in front of us, and it was a turn that came out of nowhere. So in my mind, in my first year of residency, I'm freaking out in my mind, and I'm looking over at my attending, and she's speaking exactly in this tone. Okay, let's run the next banana bag. Let's give it 10 minutes, and then let's repeat her vitals. Calm the whole time. So, by God's grace, we stabilized the patient. Everything was fine. But I was just so stunned that I had to ask her a question afterwards. And I was like, how in the world were you able to stay so calm throughout that crashing case? And literally, she said, when I'm frantic, I can't think. And that stuck with me for the rest of my career. So I then learned it didn't matter what was going on. I just could not afford to be frantic in the midst of crisis. You're the one who all the nurses are looking up to, everyone, patients are looking up to. And it doesn't change in a digital world. It just means you actually have more responsibility to stay up to date with the times because you're going to have more questions. So that's something that has stuck with me and I think has helped me. And funny enough, I got an award. I went from being the intern who in my mind was frantic to then getting an award for literally that, staying calm under pressure. So
wow.
I think my training helped me a lot.
Okay. Okay. That's good. And it's all about staying calm. Maybe we should get you a coffee mug or a tea cup. Stay calm. I'm your doctor. Um, well, all right. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, for any listeners who are out there and want to follow and chart a similar path, what's practical advice that you would give to them, just to kind of get started and stay motivated?
Just do it. If you're called, just do it. Don't try to figure it all out ahead of time. Don't try to have 10,000 plans. Just do it, and you'll learn along the way. That's really it. Just do it.
Just do it. Well, listen, y'all heard Dr. Larissa. She said it. Just do it. And the Lord will order your steps. And, as we wrap up, we just want to say once again, Dr. Larissa, thank you for having a conversation with us today around functional health as we know it and all of what it takes to be a doctor in this day and age, which it changes literally every day. So thank you once again for being our guest on the Seed Lab. And we are so excited for you and what you have. What are you, by the way, is there anything that you got going on? Like, what are you up to? Is there anything you want to tell the people? Where can they find you? Tell us.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So, by God's grace, I'm running Rofi, which is ROPHE, my private practice, which I'd started right after residency. And, we're helping people lose weight, helping people come off medications for high blood pressure, diabetes, etc., as their numbers improve. So you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Larissa.md, and Rofi is at ROPHEHQ. We're also building the Seed Lab, which is our health coaching program. So if you know that you have any type of metabolic issues, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, etc., and not only do you want to have your numbers reversed, but you also even value food as medicine, I think what we're building is very unique in the sense that you don't have to think too much. We've literally done all of the thinking for you. All you have to do is show up and go through the process. And by God's grace, I really do believe you'll see the outcomes. As long as you can stick with the process, you will see the outcomes. So, very excited about that. I've also written books. They're available on my website. They're also going to be all on Amazon. Yeah, Amazon next month. So, in a nutshell, that those are a few things I have going on.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being our guest on the Seed Lab. God bless you. And we will, until the next episode, y'all, stay tuned.